Let the C-SPAN viewers know exactly what the problem is because the media doesn't seem to be telling them.
When we end the wars overseas, bring the troops home, and allow the healing to begin, it will be because of you.
They did everything they could to keep Tulsi Gabbard off that debate stage because they didn't want to hear what she had to say. There are soldiers currently deployed who weren't even born when the war on terror began. There's no reason we need to spend taxpayer dollars on defending the soil of Germany, France, and other. The longer we stay where we shouldn't be, the more problems we're going to be causing.
Millions of Americans swear an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States against enemies foreign and domestic, and then they are sent overseas to fight and kill and potentially die to protect the interests of billionaire military contractors, cynical politicians, and foreign dictators. When they come home, they are subjected to the very worst healthcare in this country and treated like second-class citizens. They deserve so much better than that.
I will bring the troops home. I will turn America into one giant Switzerland, armed and neutral. There is no reason why we need to continue to be the policemen of the world.
That drives it. You are the power.
The Veterans Administration is among the worst in our healthcare system. This top-down monopoly is unacceptable for any person, let alone those willing to sacrifice their lives in service to our country.
Jo Jorgensen is going to end the wars and bring the troops home and treat them to the care that they deserve and allow the healing to begin.
We need to have a strong military defending our shores, but there is no reason for us to be defending the rest of the world. It only makes things worse. We've got to come home. I'm Jo Jorgensen, and I approve this message.
And welcome to Joe 20 Campaign Update, a weekly show dedicated to providing a forum for key members of the Jorgensen presidential campaign to update the libertarian grassroots on strategies, ideas, and upcoming events in the run-up to the historic 2020 presidential election. A disclaimer, this little show, this effort, is done in cooperation, but at the same time independent of the Jorgensen 20 presidential campaign. Every time I see one of those commercials, every time I hear the voices of our candidates, I get chills. I certainly do. In the entire time that I've been a part of this party, I have never seen the type of effort and professionalism in terms of campaign videos, while simultaneously not only just speaking about, but evoking libertarian philosophy, as I do when I see the commercials that open up our shows. They are compelling to say the least. So welcome. Joining us tonight is Jim Turney. I got the opportunity to meet Jim Turney just last year in Miami at an LNC meeting. And what was remarkable was how casual, how friendly the conversation was. And we talked libertarian philosophy and candidates. And it wasn't really till afterwards, as someone relatively new to the party, I've really only been, I'd call it hyper-involved since, say, 2014, 2012, but really on the national level with the presidential campaign since really 2016. I was astonished to find out that he was the former LNC chair on a number of occasions, while simultaneously, in the next stage of his libertarian life, he's been elected to the city commission, roughly equivalent to what we call here in the Northeast a city council, of Altamonte Springs, Florida, as my good friend Elizabeth Barley calls it, an innovative, low-tax, debt-free city of about 50,000 people just north of Orlando. He's joining us tonight in his capacity with the Jo Jorgensen presidential campaign. He's the Southeast Regional Director of Jo Jorgensen for President. Welcome, Jim, to the Campaign Update Joe 20.
Thank you for having me.
It's
good to see you again.
It is, and you have a remarkable resume here because, obviously I'm a big fan of the movement. It's fair to say, but when I meet people like yourself who've literally dedicated their lives to reigniting liberty in this nation, and have done it at so many levels, at such great personal expenses. I was just mentioning the last show, the candidates for office, they give so much of themselves financially, time with their family, their personal privacy. Now take that to the next level of someone like yourself, who is despite all the challenges that libertarian candidates face in this nation, as I say, as I'm immersed in the last week of a petition drive to get Joe on the ballot here in Rhode Island. So I've got my own taste of it going on. But imagine, if you will, the sacrifice you make as a libertarian actually holding elective office, particularly at this type of level. We've been blessed in the last couple of years that we've literally gotten hundreds of candidates elected on the down ballot. And as anyone who's watched the Hour with the Candidate show that I do with Dan Fishman on LPTV, we've got a remarkable set of individuals who are looking, Jim, to do the same thing you have. So I guess the first thing, before we get into the campaign, I want to ask you, how have you done it? How have you managed it? What's motivated you? What's given you this sort of spirit?
I guess it just comes natural. I became a libertarian by really great luck at a very young age, only 13 or 14 years old, when I read Frederic Bastiat's The Law, and never looked back. And it always just seemed something very important and compelling to me that that many people were missing. And so I think we're in a long game, and I've been playing a long game, and it has been a lifetime project for me. So, but I'm honored to be able to serve both the Libertarian Party on the National Committee a number of times, including as chair, as you pointed out, as well as a candidate. And I've been lucky because of the city I'm in is a great city, and it's been relatively easy to be a Libertarian candidate there. So I'm a lucky guy, I guess, and it's still a lot to do, and that's what I'm doing right now. When I'm excited about our candidates this year as well, and so I decided to go full time and work on this campaign so that we can get the most out of this year's election cycle, and so that's just what you have to do. Somebody's got to do it. And I'm glad I'm the lucky one who can.
No, absolutely. I'm involved with the campaign as well. And, having two candidates who, again, the word compelling has been all over tonight. And that's, I guess, you and I are old enough to remember, it was the Marx Brothers, the word of the night. Well, compelling. Both our presidential and our vice presidential candidates certainly have their own unique personalities, their own approach, their own method, their own stump speech. But I am thrilled to have a presidential and a vice presidential candidate who message so effectively, and for whom the libertarian movement, and this is not a reflection of other candidates, I'm going to focus on the positive, but for whom the libertarian philosophy is not just an affectation, but it is clearly a big part of how they lead their lives. How exciting is it for you?
Oh, very exciting. It's, we have to continue, because we have built a tremendous track record over the decades. In fact, let me pause here to say that when I became voting age, the requirement was being 21 years old. And right after I turned 21, I had the pleasure of voting for John Hospers and Tony Nathan in our first ever run for president. And I've voted Libertarian ever since. So I've had a lifetime of being able to vote Libertarian. And I have met all of the candidates over those decades, and they've been an impressive lot of people. So back to my point, we have to continue being a credible alternative so that voters can consider us. And there will be a tipping point come someday. It might be now. You never know. It could be. We can't create it. We can't predict it. Maybe it's this year. But we have to stay as a credible alternative. And we've got great candidates doing that. They're very exciting. every election cycle, when we have exciting candidates like this, just makes it closer and closer to that tipping point where large numbers of Americans are going to say, we're going to consider the libertarians this time. And I sense that it's coming soon, but we're in a long game. So I'm not into predicting that. I'm just into continuing to fight that fight of credibility, keeping a credible alternative offered to the American voters.
Before we get into the specifics of the Southeast, I think you and I spoke briefly before the show. And one of the things that we wanted to showcase, because some people watch this tonight, it's playing a little later on the East Coast, and we'll share this amongst the affiliate Facebook pages and social media tomorrow. How important, and this is one of those questions that seems obvious, but I'm going to make it a little nuanced. How important are volunteering opportunities, not just for the campaign, but for individuals who are looking to grow as a libertarian while simultaneously being handed a golden opportunity to spread our message?
Well, there's a lot of potential opportunity there. Let me talk about one or two of them. My one right now that everyone can do. So everybody can volunteer to do the following important and valuable thing. Take one of these business card size Joe 20 literature material. Keep that with you in your pocket here, and whenever you are out and about, take one home, take one with you when you leave home every day, and don't come home with it in an incidental conversation, hopefully, or at the very least, leave it somewhere conspicuous. And on the back side of this, there are about 7 key points of the campaign. And so those are good talking points. And we also have some other literature, but that one's real pocket size and easy to give one away every day. And if you don't have one, ask the Joe Jorgensen campaign for one, your campaign director in your state, because they're out there now. And that is a way to have those conversations. People are talking about politics right now. So those are the points that you can share with other people and let them know that we have a great candidate. That's a good picture right there, and that's a good way to let them know. Just looking at that picture and seeing the name is already achieving something. Then another way is to carry a sign in your car, and when you're parked, whether it's while you're shopping, whether you're at work or at home even, put that sign in the car window. And then every now and then, get out, hold it up in your hand at a busy intersection, and with the other hand, wave at folks and look them in the eye as they're stopped for the stop sign or traffic light. And that is a little less personal engagement, but it is an effective way to get the name out there. And of course, to leverage that effectiveness, take a selfie when you do that, post it up on your Facebook page or other social media, also the Jorgensen campaign page in your state or local area. Get other people doing it, because that'll make them realize that there are people doing it, and it'll motivate them to get out and try it themselves. And so those are 2 examples of things that everybody can do. There are a lot of opportunities to do personal engagement things, telephone banking, for example, text messaging, door knocking, canvassing. But a lot of people don't want to do a personal interaction type of volunteering. We've got other opportunities for volunteers, many of them. So here's the thing you need to do. To get started, go to joe20.com/volunteer. Now on the front page at joe20.com, the homepage does have a form, but that's actually not our volunteer form. It's our contact form. So you'll see on the menu there are several places to navigate to joe20.com/volunteer. Fill out that form, and then we'll start fitting you in. Some states are already sending out one of these cards, for example, to every single person who is on the volunteers, a set, not one, 50 of them. And so that way they'll be able to have a supply to take one a day and give it away, and of course resupply you if you need it. We have some other programs too. For example, forums like this year are online. A lot of communities have candidate forums. They want to usually focus on the local candidates, but they'll often have an opportunity for someone to speak on behalf of the presidential candidates. Usually, of course, they only ask to bring a surrogate. Well, if you find out about those forums, let your state leadership of the Jorgensen campaign know about that, and we can get a surrogate there to speak on behalf of Joe Jorgensen. So that's another opportunity to interact, sometimes face to face, but even if it's online, like often the case this year. And I can't even imagine trying to list all the volunteer opportunities there are. We even test, we have the Lean Mean meme machine where we test memes, with volunteers to see what kind of messages get across to what demographics. So we've got a good data analytics team doing that. There's all sorts of other things. I just got off, I'm on the road right now, as you can probably tell from my location. I'm visiting around all the states in my region. And I just was petitioning in Alabama, since you mentioned petitioning in Rhode Island. It turned out not to be so close as we thought, but we had a close call in Maine, and we didn't want to have a close call in Alabama, especially on the losing side. And so I went there and did some petitioning, and I've done that, of course, all my life, it seems, for libertarian candidates, and not going to stop anytime soon, I hope. And that was a great experience. And so we had, for example, volunteers from around the United States calling stores in Alabama because many of them wouldn't let us petition that normally would. They didn't want somebody out front of their store handing out, getting close to people, handing pens and clipboards and that sort of thing. So they called all these stores to find out which ones might allow petitioners to stand in front. Things like that. So that just is an example of one little tiny idea that volunteers can do. If you're on that phone banking team, you might get asked to just call some stores in the area to find out about petitioners. Of course, our petitioning season is now over. The good news is that it looks like we're going to be on the ballot in all 50 states. And there's still a couple that haven't certified us for the ballot, but it doesn't look like we've got any more states that could be a close call. So we're not ready to celebrate yet until we're certified everywhere, all the way around. And of course, sometimes we get a challenge. So it's even possible that a state that certified us could have a legal challenge. We're dealing with that in some states, not so much on the presidential level, but that happens as well. So, and so we're really giving volunteers something to do this year. There's just a lot of opportunity there, and some of it allows you to talk about our campaign message, and some of them are just the kind of behind the scenes work that has to happen to make a successful campaign. You can be part of this, in other words. Go to joe20.com/volunteer, give us your details so that we can reach out and see how you fit in and what works for you, how you can work for us.
What do, besides making some great friends, besides perhaps meeting and interacting with people that for whom you'd only met on social media, particularly given the nature of our convention this year, in all the years that you volunteered, in all the campaigns that you participated in all the national efforts that you helped run, what does it do for someone's sort of libertarian spirit, their esprit de corps, their motivation after they've spent time in a campaign with other libertarians? In other words, what do volunteers often walk away with?
Well, there's a variety of ways people, of course, experience campaigns, but there's always, I think, some excitement, especially when you get a chance to be near the candidate. The candidates, both our candidates, Joe Jorgensen and Spike Cohen, are traveling. They're both on the road tonight. Joe Jorgensen, I believe, is in Arkansas, and Spike Cohen is in California, as I recall from the schedule I looked at earlier today. We've got a bus that's beautifully branded with paint colors and message and photograph of Joe Jorgensen. And I, in fact, followed that bus and was part of that tour from Kentucky down through Mississippi and Louisiana. And before I went to petition in Alabama, and now the bus is in California with Spike. And so it's a lot of opportunities. In fact, I think, if I'm not mistaken, we will be able, we hope, that we're going to get the candidates in all 50 states. So you're probably going to have a chance, even if it might take a few hours to get there, to see the candidates and meet them if you haven't already, like at the convention. So the way to find out about that, by the way, is also at joe20.com. Go to joe20.com/events, and you can find out where the candidates are and look down at the calendar of where they're going and start making plans, because that's always exciting. I think it's important to remember this is a long game. One of the things that, to answer your question, that I have seen over the years that happens with some people is they really get caught up in the excitement. And libertarianism, after all, to most of us who are libertarians, seems so not just compelling, but just so logical. It just seems so comfortable and right. And we just sometimes don't understand that other people don't see it as clearly as we do. So a lot of people start thinking, oh, we'll have a libertarian society in a few years. It's just going to take a little more time and we'll be there. And this is really, something, like I said before, it can happen in short order when we reach a tipping point. But so far, it's been a lifetime project for me. And you have to keep up your spirits, even when things don't turn out the way you imagine they could have. Mm-hmm. So be realistic. And my motto on this particular issue is to always do better than expected. If you're a candidate for office, or if you're an activist or a leader in the local or state or even national party, keep that in mind. Just do better than expected. And the reason that's so important, and there's, by the way, a lot of ways, of course, that what are the expectations? There's a lot of ways to do better than expected and to measure that. But the reason it's important to always focus on that is because it gives us momentum. That's what we need to keep moving forward in a positive frame of mind. So I would just encourage everyone to keep a positive frame of mind. If I tried to describe how I thought things were going to look at this point in my life, when I became a libertarian as a teenager, and even for a couple of decades thereafter, it just didn't look that hopeful. I never would have dreamed we could have come as far as we have by now. It just didn't seem possible back then. So I'm very optimistic, obviously, and feel that there is a substantial reason to be optimistic. It's not just a frame of mind. That's important too, but it's also the reality that we have made tremendous strides. And it's not even. Of course, we've lost some in some areas. You can always argue that things have gotten worse in some respects, and you would be correct. But things really have gotten better, and so that's the positive frame of mind that you have to keep, because we're in this look for the long haul. It's not some just one election cycle to victory to make a libertarian society.
It really is a marathon, not a sprint, as a former football coach would tell you.
Good analogy.
And yet at the same time, like I said, we run a weekly show with down ballot candidates, and we had two gentlemen tonight who just knocked our socks off, as you and I would have said years ago. Living testament to the philosophy. Very often in parts of the country where they've got a dedicated family and volunteer base, but at times seeming to walk alone. When you're running one of these local candidacies in a small town or a rural district, or sometimes even in an urban district, faced with all the challenges they face today, which is why it's so important. What's interesting, through the miracle of telephony, as I joke about it, the fact that someone in a suburb of Rhode Island could phone bank and text people on behalf of a presidential candidate, or let's just say a local senatorial candidate, state senatorial candidate in South Dakota, is astonishing. That's the kind of reach that we have now. And I will argue, and I love your thoughts on this as someone who's coordinating an entire region, that we've got something of an equal footing in this campaign. We're no longer, at least for this presidential election, challenged by the stadiums full of people. That to a very large degree, we've got the same production values. We've got the same style of reaching people. It's just a question of working it a little bit harder to reach a few more people, taking that one extra step, all right, to maybe go out to that community group, to maybe join in on that texting group. And that's what it's going to take this time around. Every one of us stretching a little harder to make things work on just a little bit better level. And the aggregate, the consummate ability of libertarians to step up for that big moment has never been more challenging, I don't think ever more important, and I think very likely to happen this time around. But you coordinate an entire region. So, in my case, I'm the campaign manager for Rhode Island, if you will. I've been delegated to be in charge, if you will, of regional media for New England. But you're and I work for with Richard Manzo. You're running the Southeast. Tell us, you've had the advantage now of having the candidates roll through. Whereas New England, there's I wouldn't say homogeneity, but there's a little bit of a sameness as you go from small state to small state. The region that you cover is so diverse financially, spiritually, in terms of big cities, agricultural districts. Tell us what it's like to campaign in the southern states, if you will, for the Joe Jorgensen campaign.
Well, it's even more complicated than in one respect than you alluded to, and that is we have in this region a number of states that the perception is, and remember, perception is reality in politics very often. The perception is among the voters that it's clear who's going to win the Electoral College in their state. And in those states, and those states are across America, there are states like that. In those states, we really should work hard on the message to say, look, if there's any doubt in your mind who's going to get the Electoral College in your state, then you've got a different strategy. But if there's no doubt in your mind who's going to win, and that's more often the case, and like I said, in my region, certainly a bunch of states like that, then you really should consider voting Libertarian, because then you're really sending a signal to those leaders, the elected people, the people who give guidance to the elected leaders. They often try to read the tea leaves to figure out why are people voting this way or that way. And it can be difficult. There's so many reasons to vote Republican or Democrat. It could be just because of family tradition, or because, you really love one candidate, or it could be because you perceive that party as, having the ideology that you most closely identify with. But they're trying to figure that out. If you vote Libertarian, there's no doubt what direction you would like to see the country go in. So you have the freedom to do that if it's really perceived that your state's Electoral College votes are going to go one way or the other. The harder part is messaging in a state where it's not clear, where you have to give more of a reason, work a little harder to get that vote for a Libertarian, because people are very conscious. So, of course, I live in Florida, and Florida is the classic state that always has very close elections for president and even for other statewide offices. And so it's a state where it's a little harder to make the point. We have to, we just have to work harder. And we do, like you said, we have a opportunity with the internet, and we are a large state, so we do have a large number of volunteers and libertarians there, and a lot of good people and some good candidates, some good down ballot candidates. In fact, you've had a couple, at least one on your show that I can recall. And so we just have to work harder in those states. But I would strongly encourage all those listening right now, if you live in a state that the perception is it's clear who's going to win the Electoral College vote, then that's a very good argument to make to people to vote libertarian, vote their conscience. They don't have to worry about voting for the lesser of two evils. That's sort of already decided, if you will, in their state. And so that's a message, by the way, Jo Jorgensen. I've heard her when I was traveling with her for about a week. I heard her answer a lot of questions about that, and to make that suggestion. So it's an important point. Keep that in mind when you're campaigning. That's the toughest one in Florida, where we have everybody's thinking, some people think we're going to elect Biden, throw the election towards Biden. Some people think we're going to throw the election towards Trump. I don't know, and don't think it's something we can tell. The Libertarian Party, I think, takes fairly evenly from both of them. So it's a very debatable point, but it's something that voters are conscious of in some places.
What are the big issues? You're connecting with the public down there. The candidates have been there. What are the big issues, say, for a state like Florida versus, I don't know, let's take another state in your area, Georgia, or even Alabama. Or is everyone looking at COVID primarily?
I don't see too many people that are concerned about what do the libertarians want to do about the COVID problem. I think they have pretty well figured out what we would do, and that's leave it to individuals to decide how best to protect themselves. But the big issues are actually pretty much like nationwide. I think there's a lot of concern about criminal justice and even social justice issues. And I think military is still one that we talk about a lot, and criminal justice reform, of course, and they're very important issues that the voters still care about. But it is a strange year. The biggest issue by far ever seen in the cities, in the rural areas, and in every state, the big issue is, do you love Trump or hate him? He is a very polarizing figure, and pretty much everybody, has a strong opinion, it seems. And that is a real big issue with people. Most people seem this year to be wanting to signal that they love Trump or hate him with their vote, or with their conversation at least. And let's hope not so much with their vote, for the reasons I've already given. But that's the biggest issue I see out there, as opposed to a public policy issue.
You were involved in petitioning in Alabama. I love your reaction to this. What I found, I did a tiny bit of petitioning up in Maine, done a whole lot of attempting to petition in Rhode Island. I have had people screaming at me that third parties are going to be the reason that fill in the blanks gets elected. And there's a tremendous amount of rude opposition by doctrinaire Republicans and Democrats that look to us, and maybe they're setting up their excuses, that look to us as the primary political evil, and yet at the same time thoroughly unengaged with the notion that it might be the sameness of those two failed political organizations that might be leading to such antipathy amongst the voter base. What did you see in Alabama and other places?
Well, I see even people who are not, at least usually, very, active politically that have been engaged on this point. And I suppose the positive thing that I get from it is that because both sides so strongly feel that we're taking votes that they should have to save the country, either from Democrats, from Joe Biden, take your choice, depending on who you're talking to. That tells me that we're really appealing across those lines very well, because if everyone thought that we are just Republican light or something, some kind of, conservatives who smoke pot or whatever all these memes are that some of them tend to think of us as somehow, close to the Republicans or conservative side. If they really thought that, then they would say, oh, we already know, whose vote you're getting. And people do think, that's what the Republicans, conservatives think. But I have a lot of Democrat friends, progressives, and they think that we're taking their votes. That we would be voting with them if we weren't voting Libertarian. So they're very concerned about that and think that we should help them get rid of Trump. And so that is just the big issue this year. It really is the big issue, I think. And it's been the big issue for at least a year. And COVID really hasn't changed that. So I think that's just, it's not a new thing, by the way. I mean, I've heard it all my life that somehow, we should get with the program as libertarians and vote Republican or Democrat, decide, because those are the two that matter, and that's it. But I don't agree with that, obviously. Never voted Republican or Democrat. I'm not going to start at this old age. So that is something that, but we'll always hear it until, of course, one of those parties dies or they merge together to fight the Libertarian Party. They're going to claim that we're taking their votes.
That whole notion,
stronger this year.
That whole notion that we're taking their vote, is that narcissism? Is it arrogance? Is it naivete? Is it ignorance? What do you think? All of the above. What are your thoughts?
I think it means that we're appealing to them, that they look at us and they think they see an appealing political label. The word libertarian has a lot of positive baggage. That doesn't mean everyone agrees with libertarian principles, but it still has a positive spin. I've noticed all my life that when conservatives and liberals, or left and right, whatever you want to call it, then when they get in a corner and are starting to lose their debate, they almost invariably start trying to position and argue from the point of view of their basic principles, the libertarian principles that are to some degree part of everyone's political beliefs, it seems, at least in America. And so that is that's the core of real values that people can agree on. They want to game the system, of course. They want to feel like if they elect somebody who believes like they do, that they're going to get some benefits, and the other guys who disagree with them are going to get put down in some fashion. So there's all those games going on. But when it comes to issues, they believe that they agree with us in an essence, and that's where that argument goes. So they both see us as attractive, therefore they can easily see that we could take their votes. And that's why I think it's a positive thing. It's sort of a compliment to us that they think that we could take their votes with our positions.
Yeah, what is it a wise man once said? The taste of their tears is delicious to us. Yes, it will be on November 3rd.
He's a guy, that wise man is in your region, I think.
He is, and he is hard at work on the election trail and deserves our support. Nick Sarwark left an indelible image on this party, and worked his ass off for years, to be blunt. So I hope everyone will give him, regardless of the inter-party rugby match that is the biannual chairmanship race. I think we all need to step back and understand his place in this party's history, and it is an important one. Let's talk about the structure.
We all make mistakes. I made mistakes when I was chair. So Nick wasn't perfect, but he was a good chair.
He was, and it's great to see him. You know, sometimes, and I think you can attest to this because you've seen libertarians come, you've seen them go, you've seen them start off like fireworks and then have that great explosion after a very short period of time, and never to be seen again. What does it say about, what is the measure of the man, or now we would say the measure of the individual, that when they are defeated or when the fates seem against them, they turn back around and work even harder? And I'll mention Nick in that respect, although he never lost. I'll mention Larry Sharp losing so closely the vice presidential nod in 2016, yet within an hour turning around and walking into a crowded ballroom to literally start raising money and be the MC, if you will, an event for the individual who just beat him. And then you've got the individual who was victorious that day and yet fell to ashes, fell to earth, if you will, in terms of the libertarian movement. So what does it say to the nobility of that individual who can turn right around, understanding that they're part of the cause and the cause is no bigger? It should not ever be give the field, if you will, to one individual, that the cause is bigger than all of us. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, you just said some very important points about that. Obviously, it goes to character to a great extent because, in any endeavor, there are people that are going to stick with it. But I think it also goes to the fact that they get it. People who get it, that this is not something that is, as you put it, a sprint. It's a marathon. That's why I emphasize it when I talk to people as well, to libertarians. It's something that we need to stay positive. We need to stay at it. You might need to take a break every now and then because, especially if you've been working really hard on it, either as a candidate or supporting candidates and being part of the infrastructure of the Libertarian Party, which is very important to have a good, strong infrastructure. That's what I meant earlier when I said we've got to continue and stay ready and continue to be a credible alternative. And sometimes it's just that business type infrastructure of the party to keep the processes going. It can be a lot of work. It can be tiring. It can be thankless. And it can be rewarding. I find it very rewarding. And I think I took a little bit of a break by almost not planned, but by coincidence. I ended up with a job in Europe for a while. And even though I worked with libertarians while I was there, that was sort of a break for me. And I think it did help. So I guess it's just a matter of getting the point that this is a marathon that gets people to go back. And it's also a bit of a process thing. For example, this story that you specifically mentioned about Larry Sharp, right after election, he's back in the game immediately. Well, one of the things I tell candidates is election night is one of your best opportunities to deliver your message, because even if the media hasn't covered you before, if you show up where they are, make it easy for them always. That's a basic principle of working with the media. Go to where they are, which is usually where the winning candidate is, because they want to be there when he gives his victory or her victory speech. Go there and make yourself available for a concession speech and that makes the Libertarian Party look good. It makes you look good. It sets you up for another election, sets up another candidate because you look gracious in defeat, and it gives you a chance to one more time punch in on that message. So that is an opportunity not to be missed. It's not over when the votes are counted, in other words. We still have work to do. And if you get this process and you understand the opportunities that are there, there's always another opportunity, and you have to go for it. We're in this as a marathon.
You know, there's a gentleman in Nebraska who talks about the gleam in someone's eye who's almost obsessed with the office as opposed to the work, who I often talk to, the theme being that you don't necessarily need to win the title, to have the title, to be the title, to be the office, to be the office holder. How important is that? That you just, A, before you run, don't wait to run to do all these wonderful things, and B, should you lose, be that stalking horse, be there in the rear view mirror, and maybe even be better at the job than the person who got elected.
If you can achieve that, that's extraordinary, and that's a lot of hard work, and it really takes dedication. But that is very valuable, to always be present, always on message, even between elections seasons. And so that's a good point that you made. If you can achieve that and do that, and that's a real community activist type. People really understand you care. And that gives you tremendous benefit with the next time you run for office. People really want, often if they don't even agree with you on everything, but they see you work hard, they see you care very much about your community, they reward that. So that's a very important issue. And I'm always telling libertarians to get involved in their community, not just to build relationships, but that's the single most important thing, but also so that you understand what's going on in your community, you understand that culture in your community, join civic groups, be active, and that gives you an opportunity to do what you just said, and that is to talk about the issues that you, with influencers that you just wouldn't have otherwise if you're just sitting at home. And most people aren't looking to Facebook for their political guidance, and in their local community at least. So it's better to get out and be a part of the local community, especially if you intend to be involved in a political party, because we're about trying to get people elected and of course delivering our message. The best way to do that is to have good relations with people in your community, and that is it's just invaluable. They say milk is the mother, the mother's milk of politics is money, but they also say that it's all about relationships, and I believe that relationships are more important than the money. And these days we have the internet, and that, like you said, levels the playing field a little bit. So those ads that Joe Jorgensen and Spike have going are very powerful. They deliver a very powerful message, and that's the way to deliver our message over the internet. That is, but as individuals, we ought to be involved in our community, and that's the more effective way to have an influence.
Excellent.
All politics is local, some guy said from your neighborhood.
Yeah. Ouch. They're a little ironically, the political dynasty with which he is most associated with is under real attack this week. The latest of the latest Kennedy generation, presumed to take on an older gentleman who was a United States senator, and the United States senator maybe he's outfoxed him. The United States senator got the AOC endorsement, managed to be that one guy who beat the trend, and it could be an abrupt ending. I'm, in Boston, the saying is, "How can we miss you if we don't go away?" And that's always true of the Kennedys. But at least in this one go around, there might be a little bit of a shortfall there in the legacy. But before you go tonight, and folks, if you're just joining us at the end, this will be in constant replay on social media. Jim Tarney is joining us. He is the Southeast Regional Division Chief, Head Honcho, Chief Water Buffalo, if you will, of the Joe Jorgensen campaign. Give us some names of the folks who are the principals in the operation in the Southeast, so people can reach out to them. Who are some of the state coordinators / managers that come to mind? I know we can't cover everybody, but let's give a little shout out to them and some of the work they're doing, and if people are looking for contacts.
Yeah, well, let me tell you about something we just implemented in the last few days that makes it really for anybody listening or watching right now to reach the state director or coordinator, as it's sometimes called, of the Joe Jorgensen campaign, the sort of the top person responsible for the Joe Jorgensen campaign in your state. It's very easy. All you have to do is write the name of your state and then type, and if it's a two-word state like South Carolina, then put a dot between the South and the Carolina. Then write at joe20.com, and you will be emailing the head of your state campaign, and that's where you can reach out to ask specific questions about what's going on in your state. Perhaps to get some signs or literature or something, they can direct you to the person in your local area who might have them, or send them to you, whatever. That's the person to coordinate with, though. And so in my region, we have some great people. I was originally the state director for Florida, and I was replaced by Chandler Langeman, who is doing an outstanding job in Florida. And another one here in South Carolina is Casey Whitener, and Ted Metz just did an awesome job. He's the Georgia State Director. He put together last weekend a great event for Joe Jorgensen in Atlanta, and was live streamed, and that live stream is available. So you can just go to YouTube or even to, I guess, Facebook. It's, I think, on both. And type in Joe Jorgensen Atlanta, and you can see that event. And we have in Alabama, where there was also a rally last weekend in Huntsville, Thaddeus Freed, and in Mississippi, where we had a rally in Jackson, the capital, and then a Let Her Speak convoy, all the way from about an hour-long convoy from Jackson to Hattiesburg, Mississippi, with the bus decorated in the campaign colors. And the new state director there is Glenn Lewis, who's doing a great job, having just started about 10 days ago, because we did have Vicki Rose, who's just incredibly great there. And I was worried that we might not be able to find a good replacement. But the reason she left the campaign is because she started another campaign, the race that she ran last year for state legislature and did so well in a three-way race, in a two-way race. This year it's a three-way race, and she's against two Republicans. But the reason it's now is because it's a special election. So when she learned that there was a special election opportunity, a great opportunity for her, especially in the Libertarian Party there in Mississippi, she said, I've got to do that. And I think that was the right decision. But we found a great replacement for her. So I'm very happy with how things are going in my region. And we're just getting ready to really crank it up from Labor Day on. These cards, we're mailing them out to folks. Thousands of folks are going to get 50 of them, with the challenge not to leave home without one and not to return home with one. In other words, make sure you give one away every day. So it's the one-a-day program, and you'll reach somebody with those 7 points and with a a nice reminder of the fact that we have a woman in the centennial year of women's suffrage. The Libertarian Party has a woman candidate, and an impressive one as well when you hear her speak. And the website's on there, of course, on both sides. So you can, well, I'll take that back, on one side. And so they can look her up at joe20.com. So I'm very honored to now be able to serve, not just having served as the national chair and in the people of my city in Florida, Altamont Springs, as an elected city commissioner, but now as the Southeast director of the Joe Jorgensen campaign. So I'm really a lucky guy, and I feel very honored to be on the team. And we're going to do great things this year. We've got 2 more months to make it happen, folks. So time to go into action.
Time to get to work. Well, Jim Turney, thank you so much for joining us on Campaign Update. We're going to get this out into the social media world tonight and tomorrow. Again, a wonderful example, a lifetime of experience, and yet at the same time, very, very current on literally every technique imaginable in getting Joe over the finish line. So thank you. Well, as we like to say here at the Coalition, thank you for being you, and for all the great service to the party over so many years, and at the same time, just, again, being right in the fray again for 2020. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Thanks a lot, Pat. Don't forget, don't leave home without one.
Absolutely. Have a great night. Folks, we'll see you next Friday. I think Richard Manzo is up next. We'll see you soon.